Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Yossi Siegel, who you may know by the name Seth Siegel. He writes a great deal about water issues in Israel. He's a businessman, he's a communal activist, and based in New York, but very, very concerned about issues in Israel. Yossi, real pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here.
So you wrote recently in the New York Times about the potential role of water in Middle East peace. Tell me about that.
Well, it turns out, and not by accident, that Israel has the most sophisticated water resource management governance in the entire world. And that's a combination of law and regulation and technology and smart public policy. And a lot of the world is going to be going soon into a water crisis because of a whole bunch of macro trends like global warming, like growth of population. In addition, that population as it grows, also more and more middle-class people will come to that, and middle-class people result in enormously greater amounts of water being used and greater pollution of water resources. So for all these macro trends, there's going to be more demand, there's going to be less supply, and lo and behold, Israel has kind of figured it out already. And I suspect that in the coming 20, 30 years, Israel will be a solution to lots of the world's problems, including the most gravely water-deprived area, water-stressed area, will be the Middle East.
But with all of that, Israel certainly seems to be suffering a great deal. They always tell us, to shut the water and watch out for the drought because it looks bad. And then on top of that, it seems that we're even giving water away to our neighbors.
Yes, well, first, it's a compound question or comment that you make, so to break it into its parts. First of all, it's not an occasion to start being sloppy about water. One of the key elements of Israel's brilliance in water management is its public education. And so the Israeli citizens, as well as business people, farmers, have all been educated on why they have to conserve water in a way that this doesn't happen around the world. In addition, water is now priced in Israel for all citizens and soon will be priced for all farmers at its real cost, which will also encourage conservation. And in terms of the element about giving the water away to neighbors, some of the water is being given away. That's under treaties, peace treaties, but most of the water that actually is coming from Israeli sources are sold at some price to Israel's neighbors, and usually it's water that's surplus. It doesn't come at the expense of Israeli economy or society.
So when you say that the price of Israel is really defined by the market, I have to tell you, having lived there now for about 20 years, I actually find that water seems to be relatively low-priced, meaning I don't find myself, telling my daughters, hey, get out of the shower because you're costing me so much money. Don't you think there's room to raise the price?
Well, Israel actually has a very interesting two-tier pricing structure for its domestic market, its citizen market, and that is that up to a certain amount of monthly water, actually it's every 2 months, but a certain amount of monthly water, the price is very, very cheap. Once you get above that threshold, all water used above that threshold is charged at a higher step rate. And it's still not wildly expensive. It's still a lot cheaper than buying Perrier or bottled water, but nonetheless, it still is more expensive. And price mechanisms, market mechanisms, have been proven to work in addressing issues of supply and demand.
So if we feel that we can afford it, then it's not that we have to be worrying about the whole macro water issue of the country as retail users of water?
Precisely. And in fact, what Israel has done is changed water from being a struggle with nature to becoming an economic input. And that transformation, it means that if you plan for it and you're prepared to pay for it, you can have all the water you want.
Mm-hmm. So the source of water in Israel comes mostly from where?
That's the other beauty about the Israeli system, is that it's not dependent upon any one source anymore, whereas most of the world largely depends on either aquifers or surface water of lakes or robust rainfall. Israel has managed a new system that has so many elements to it, and I can only just address a few of them. But, for example, desalinated water now is a significant source of water for domestic use. There's still some water being pumped from the Sea of Galilee, from the Kinneret. Obviously, there's water being taken from the aquifers along the coast and also in the mountain area. along the West Bank. And so there's a lot of different sources of water, as well as, of course, rain. What makes Israel also remarkable and a world leader is that it takes the vast majority of its already used water that was used in the kitchen or the bathroom or the shower, treats the water to a very high level of purity, and then reuses it as appropriate for agriculture. So in most of the world, 60 to 80% of the total water supply is used for agriculture. In Israel, it's a little below 50%, so that's already better. But in addition, the water that's used for agriculture, about half of that water is reused water, so it reduces the demand on fresh water that most other countries experience and, in many cases, endure.
Mm-hmm. We are talking with Yossi Siegel, who's an expert on the Israeli water system. In fact, he's writing a book about it, and he's been sharing with us some of the big picture issues. Let's move over to a topic that you do talk quite a bit about, which is how water and politics fit in, especially in terms of the potential for peace in the region. Is water the tool that we need to get some recognition amongst from our neighbors?
You know, I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal, I think in January, which I talked about the Red Sea-Dead Sea Canal and the way that Israel, Jordan, and to a slightly less degree the Palestinian Authority were able to, without any help from diplomats, without any third parties, without any, press conferences and deadlines and all that, they were able to develop a system that will generate a significant amount of fresh water from desalinated sources from the Red Sea. And that will also help to revive the Dead Sea's shrinking level to sort of stabilize the Dead Sea. And that I gave as an exciting example of where the parties, governed by their own self-interest, were able to come to terms. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody tomorrow is, locking arms and singing Kumbaya together, but it shows that they can work together when they need to work together. And I would argue that economic peace can be a precursor to a political peace. The parties get to know each other better. They become interdependent. Their economies become woven together, and as that goes on, as time goes by, it will make the inevitability of if not peace, then peaceful coexistence more logical.
Do you think that the instability in the region, however, makes that a very short-term possibility? Just if you look at how Israel and Iran had a relationship when Israel helped Iran in the past and developed their water system, and quite frankly, now we're just helping them to reroute their long-term missiles into our ports so that we can take control of them.
Well, look, I think not just in the Middle East, but all over the world, there's always a push and pull on policy issues. What's so dramatic about the Middle East is that it's so dramatic. There's rockets and missiles and threats of genocide and stuff like that, and it has the attention of the world and the attention of the news media. So it makes it much more dramatic. But I think that makes the argument all the more powerful why you need to use all the tools in the toolbox, diplomatic, economic, infrastructure, that you possibly can to help facilitate that conversation. I know that there are obviously some people who say that the water system that is being created between Jordan and Israel, and Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinians will suffer the same fate as the gas pipeline from Egypt to Israel. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case, because here you have stakeholders who are very, very committed and very self-interested in seeing it succeed for the sake of their own people and their own economies.
So tell us about the economics of water, especially for Israel in terms of exporting the technology. Has Israel been able to make itself a global power in the world of water technology?
I wouldn't call it yet a global power, but I would say that it certainly has set itself on the right path. A little less than about 10 years ago, through separate means, some business people, some government people, separately, not thinking together necessarily at first, began understanding that Israel could play a world leadership role in water technology exports. And then these wonderful people sort of found themselves coming together and lobbied the government to, the fellow from the government inside the government, these other two people from outside the government, started lobbying the government to give a higher priority to water. And at that time, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Labor, now called the Ministry of Economy, decided to make water exports a key interest of the government, and they created a major water show, which is every other autumn in Israel, which attracts thousands, more than 10,000 participants, and it helps to focus attention on Israeli technology and Israeli products for export. Just in those few years since this WATEC, Water Technology, WATEC conference has begun, Israel has grown from about $750 or $800 million a year in water-related exports to over $2 billion now in water exports. And I would say that that kind of growth curve is going to continue for quite some time. There are some people, very smart people in Israel, who have charted this as possibly growing to a $10 billion industry in another 10 years. So I don't know if that number is too aggressive, but it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility.
All right, so other than drip irrigation, which was something that we've been well known for a long time, what's another example of a technology that we're able to export in the water industry?
Well, there are examples large and small. So there's all kinds of like wastewater treatment projects that have been created. There's a relatively small company called Atlantium, which through laser technology has water filtered through a tube, and through the use of lasers purifies the water. It's not for civilian use, domestic use, as much as it is for the food and beverage industry. But this company has enjoyed success in well over 100 countries around the world. It's somewhat below the radar. But they're obviously IDE, which is a desalination company, has enjoyed enormous success around the world, not including the Islamic world, but the rest of the world, in building desalination plants. They are on the cutting edge of the best technology for desalination. And there are, in fact, somewhere between 200 and 300, depending on how you want to count the company, whether it's a startup as a real company or not. But there are nearly 300 entities, we'll call it that are now focused on water technology or water-related products. So it's really quite remarkable. Plus you have, by the way, established companies, originally kibbutz companies like Amiad or Burmad or Ari, which is obviously separate from Netafim, which is also a kibbutz industry. But those companies have enormous levels of exports around the world and are doing great stuff. Passon, likewise, another water-related kibbutz industry. So there's more going on in Israel than I think a lot of people recognize.
I think it's great. Actually, just talking to you makes me feel more optimistic about the possibilities. But Yossi, we are just about out of time. We've been talking with Yossi Siegel, who you may have seen writing under the name Seth Siegel. He writes a great deal about the water industry in Israel and how it actually could help to change the whole peace map in the region. Yossi, in the last few seconds, just tell us, how is it best for people to follow your work?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I tweet every day about news from Israel and water, and you can follow me with or as you call it in Israel, Strudel, Seth, S-E-T-H, capital letter M, and then capital S, and then I-E-G-E-L, Seth M. Siegel, and that's probably a good way to follow me.
All right, we'll put a link to that at the show notes at goldsteinongelt.com. Yossi Siegel, thanks so much for your time.
It was a pleasure being on. Great questions.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.